And before we begin, I just want to recognise that we're all joining from different parts of the country. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners, but not necessarily of where I'm meeting or where I'm joining from, but all of the Indigenous nations on which we collectively meet. So I pay my respects to any Indigenous people on the call today, and to elders past, present and emerging. And I'd also like to recognise the strong connection that these traditional owners have with the land and emphasise the lessons that we can take from their traditional practices in confronting our present climate crisis. So YCAN is an independent community group based in the City of Yarra. I presume because you've found this webinar through one of our communication channels, you're at least vaguely familiar with what we do, but we exist to inspire urgent action in response to the climate emergency. So one of our key aims is to foster awareness and build skills within the community, and this is where this webinar comes in. So we appreciate you taking some time out on a weeknight to broaden your knowledge, and hopefully in a really meaningful way. This is the second of YCAN's Climate Solutions webinar series, and builds nicely from our first one a month ago, which was on soil health. And we had the National Soil Advocate, Sue Besto from the Office of the National Soils Advocate, presenting to us on that topic. So on the third Wednesday of each month, we hold these seminars, and we'll continue to do that for the next couple of months. So keep a lookout for future invites as well. So next month's topic is on electric transport futures, which will be another really interesting topic. So I'll explain briefly how the session will run. To ensure things run smoothly as possible, we'll pop everyone on mute. If you do have a question, please share it during the chat function, and/or will also be Adrian will also pause at a number of junctures throughout the presentation to have a chance for questions. And do note as well that the session will be recorded and uploaded to our website after the session, so that we can share it as widely as possible. But it's fairly simple, straightforward. So with that, I'll hand over to Shane, who's going to introduce Adrian, our guest speaker.
So tonight's guest speaker is Dr. Adrian Morphett. Adrian has worked as an environmental engineer for more than a decade with the environmental and social consulting firm Earth Systems. Over that time, Adrian has spearheaded work to develop the technology to produce biochar on a commercial scale. Since late 2015, Adrian has had day-to-day experience running a biochar production facility for the City of Manningham, which makes use of the council's green waste. For reference, the City of Manningham takes in the suburbs including Bulleen, Templestowe and Doncaster. You can buy the biochar produced by Adrian's biochar facility under the brand name Green Man Char. Biochar is really exceptional at stimulating the growth of soil microbial life, and as a consequence, plant growth through the symbiotic relationships formed between plants and soil microbial life. Furthermore, as we heard from Sue Besto last month, the growth of soil microbial life helps build stable soil carbon, which is a carbon negative process. This is not a topic that Adrian is going to dwell upon at any length tonight, but you can find many excellent resources on the internet from both an academic standpoint and from gardeners and farmers on the many benefits of biochar in promoting soil health. And so with that introduction, and without further ado, I'll hand over to Adrian. Thank you, Adrian.
No worries. Thanks, Shane. Thank you, YCAN, and thank you, everybody, for taking the time out on a cold Wednesday night in Melbourne to listen to me talk about biochar. So, yeah, so as Jeff just alluded to, this is a really good segue to follow on from the excellent presentation from last month about regenerative farming and soil health as well. So this is another one of the feathers in the bow, I guess, around a solution for our climate emergency. So I've been working solidly on this for the last decade at least, pretty much flat out, and we have been successful and continue to be so. We are leaders in the field internationally, and look, what I'll be talking about today is just giving you a taste of biochar, where the industry is up to, a bit about our journey, because our journey is really quite relevant to the whole sector. Really, we are the leaders in the field and wish to remain so. So our journey does reflect the biochar journey as well. So let's start. So I've got a presentation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these sort of 6 areas, and at the end of each area I'll pause, and if there's any significant questions on those areas, I can answer questions relevant, and then I'll keep going. So so hopefully that works. So look, just quickly, a little bit about Earth Systems. Earth Systems is an environmental science and engineering consulting firm. Our head office is in Hawthorn in Melbourne, and we've got offices around the globe. So we're in Europe, Asia, Africa. We've got a very strong presence in Africa, actually, and obviously in Australia as well. So Melbourne is the head office. That's where most of my colleagues work. And I'm the principal environmental engineer there, and I head up the energy and carbon team and the biochar side of it as well. So that's a bit about Earth Systems. So look, tonight's presentation, I'm going to go through, what is bioenergy, what is biochar, and what's wood vinegar as well. Then I'll go through codes and standards, and what is sustainable biochar. There's not a lot of point making biochar that comes from unsustainable feedstocks, because then you sort of you don't get all the environmental benefits. So I'll talk about that. Then I'll talk about some technology solutions. There's actually not a lot out. There are some out there, and I'll certainly talk about them, but I'll certainly talk about our technologies, because we are the leaders at the moment with our technology. So I'll talk about that. I'll talk about suitable waste types. So what kind of feedstocks can you put in to a pyrolysis machine to get biochar? What is possible? And then I'll talk about some case studies and the carbon benefits associated with that. And then obviously I'll talk about, okay, so you've got some biochar, what can you do with it? So I'll talk about some of the end uses of that. So what we do is we've got the technology, which is a char maker, and then we actually run our own char maker. We sell the technology, we're putting machines around the world. We run our own char maker, but we've also got the Green Man Char outlet where we sell the biochar product as well. So we do have a good understanding of where the biochar is getting used in the market in Australia and globally as well. So I'll talk about that. All right, so just jumping into it now. So bioenergy. So bioenergy is the use of organic products, normally through a thermal process, to create an outcome. Basically, you're using chemical processes to modify an organic material into something else. So where biochar sits, so you've got on the left-hand side of the screen here, you've got all these different bioenergy solutions: anaerobic digestion, you've got gasification, combustion. Combustion is very simple. That's a fire. Combustion is a fire. Okay. Gasification is high temperature fire but with limited oxygen. Pyrolysis. So pyrolysis sort of sits under gasification, and that's where we sit. So we sit. Our technology and all biochar technologies are classified as pyrolysis. So pyrolysis is the class of technology used to create biochar. And look, we've stuck with pyrolysis, and this is the area we like to play in, because pyrolysis gives you so many added benefits than all the others. So with pyrolysis, you can get liquids, gas, heat, and solids. The solids are the biochar. All right. So that's why we play in the pyrolysis field, because you get all of these different outputs from it, right? Like, for example, with combustion, all you get is heat. With gasification, you just get a syngas. Whereas with, anaerobic digestion, all you get is a methane-rich gas and a lot of waste, liquid waste, which is a problem. Whereas with pyrolysis, you have no waste residues. You get liquids, heat. If you're smart, you get electricity, and you get biochar as well. And you have no problems. You have no residual issues to deal with. So that's why we play in the pyrolysis space. And look, to be honest, bioenergy is a very small field in Australia. You need everything working for you in the business case to make it stack up financially, which is what we've done. So you need everything working for you to be successful in the bioenergy sphere. Again, why we do pyrolysis. The other benefit too is, the reason I'm presenting today to YCAN, we face a climate emergency. Biochar is one of multiple solutions to this climate emergency. It does sequester carbon. So from a personal perspective, that's why I'm in this space as well, because I'm very keen to clean the atmosphere excess atmospheric carbon using pyrolysis. And I'll go through that. So what's biochar? So biochar, I mean, I should have brought some with me, to be honest, but basically, look, it looks like charcoal. If you hold a lump of it in your hand, it just looks like a piece of charcoal. The difference between charcoal and biochar is temperature. Charcoal is produced at anywhere from about 280 to about 320 degrees, so low temperature. The purpose of charcoal is to leave smoke and volatiles behind to create a long burning product. Biochar is 500 degrees. That's temperature we run at. We aim for 500 degrees. At 500 degrees, you get a beautiful, extremely high carbon content material. It looks like charcoal, but when you look at it under a scanning electron microscope, it does have differences. And the other key point of biochar is that normally it's used as a soil product. It's used as a soil fertilizer, effectively. I mean, it's not a fertilizer, it hasn't got nutrients in it, but that's what it's used for. It's used for soil application. So you put in your garden to help your garden or your veggie garden or your trees or your wheat crop, whatever it is, to help them grow. That is the purpose of biochar. It is to take wood, pyrolyze it in a machine, create this high temperature, extremely high carbon content material that you then put into soil. The other benefit of biochar is because it's being cooked at such high temperature, it's extremely stable. It's so stable that it will last in soil for over 1,000 years if it's done well, which is what we do. So, so that's where the carbon sequestration comes from, is because it lasts in the soil for such a long time that you are sequestering the carbon of the tree or rice hulls or waste, whatever it is that you've pyrolyzed. You've grabbed the carbon of that material and you've locked it up and you've put it in the soil to get all the benefits of having it in the soil, but it stays there chemically inert from natural processes of breaking down. So, but the specific description of biochar is a solid material obtained from thermochemical conversion of biomass in an oxygen-limited environment. So that's from the International Biochar Initiative Biochar Standard version 2.1. So that's the official thing. The benefits of biochar in the soil are improved nutrient and water holding capacity. So that the water holding capacity is unbelievable of this material. It can easily hold 2 or 3 times of its own weight in water. So if you've got a farm and you're struggling with drought or whatever it is, and you go and put biochar in, well, you've put it in there, it's in there for 1,000 years, and it's like a massive sponge for water. So it hangs onto it. And so now you've got, and also the plants can access the water from the biochar. There's some excellent work that's come out of Melbourne University Burnley campus that's shown the biochar has what's got called good PAW, plant available water. And so what that means is the plants, it hangs on the water, but the plants can get into it and get it out. That's the key point of biochar, right? It also has the exact properties suitable for beneficial soil microbes. So when you put biochar in the soil, all the good microbes in the soil find the biochar and it creates a habitat for them and they grow all over it and they populate the biochar. And then the plants find the biochar with all the good microbes on it, and then the plants jump onto all the good microbes. And so you have this symbiotic relationship between the plants and their roots and the microbes and all the biochar and the water and the nutrients as well. So that's what biochar is, okay? So this is what it does. You know, if you put it into a pot plant or if you put it in, so these are our photos. This is from our photos. The one on the right, I think, is most descriptive. You've got, this was in Red Hill, down the Mornington Peninsula. We had a friend plant a tree with biochar and a tree without biochar, and then they didn't do anything else. They left it for 2 years. So same rainfall, same soil, same everything, and you can see the difference in the growth of the tree with the biochar and the tree without the biochar. Okay, it's quite significant. This is what it looks like. So again, it looks like charcoal, effectively, when you're holding it in your hands. Now, what we do is we mill it and crush it, so it's got a smaller size, so it's better for being as a soil product. But effectively, that's what it looks like as it comes out of our machine. Now, when you look at it under a scanning electron microscope, this is the same. So that pen is pointing at a little piece of biochar. All of these photos are the same biochar, but a different magnification. So you can see all of those tiny, tiny little holes. That's the biochar, and that's where all the microbes live. They all go into those holes and they live in it. And then the plant roots find the biochar, and then they're all happy and wonderful things happen. So I think it's a really good example too. We opened up one of our bulk bags last year, and we found all, because we've got all this biochar sitting around our site. And what happened was a seed blew into one of our bags, and then it started to grow. So on the left, you can see we've got some grass growing out of this piece of biochar. So what we did was I cracked that biochar open, and you can see the root mass. See how the roots have just spread through the whole biochar. Like they've just gone all through it. They've just gone into the biochar as much as possible to extract water and nutrients and to keep surviving. And then what I did was I actually tried to pull this plant out of the biochar, and you can see on the right-hand photo how interlaced the roots are with the biochar. I mean, I know it's a bit of a funny example because there's no soil there, but this is what happens when you put a plant into soil with biochar. It's got dirt and it's got everything else around it. It finds the biochar and it wraps around it. So when you yank a plant out of the soil with biochar, you pull all the biochar out as well because it's found it and wrapped around it and engaged with it. So I think it's a really good example of this is how it works in the soil. This is the properties of our biochar. We've done probably over $100,000 worth of laboratory test work proving that our biochar is good, it's safe, and that we meet the biochar standard, which we do well and truly. Also, we had to use our laboratory test work. The biochar we sell is organically certified as well. So these are some of the properties that you get. Huge surface area, lots of fixed carbon. Yeah. So these are just some of the biochar products you can get. Like we sell, these are the biochar products we sell. It's quite similar for other biochar suppliers as well. So this is what you get. I won't talk about this too much, but as I said at the start of the presentation, with pyrolysis you can get all sorts of different products out of a pyrolysis machine if it's done well. And so we're trying to extract as much as possible from the pyrolysis process so that all of the benefits of the feedstock are utilized and all the benefits of the technology as well. So what we do is we actually suck out wood vinegar or pyroligneous acid, which effectively, so what you're looking at there in that bottle, that is smoke from a campfire in liquid form. So that's liquid wood smoke. So again, it comes from the process of making biochar. It's just another product that comes out of it. So again, it's a really great product. We sell it as a biostimulant. So that's been a really amazing thing. So that's just another benefit of pyrolysis. But you don't get your carbon sequestration from the wood vinegar. So I won't talk about it too much, but I'm just showing the point of when you do pyrolysis well, these are sorts of things that you can get. I should make the point too, I should have said at the start, with pyrolysis, it's an exothermic process. So the machine runs itself from the energy of the feedstock. Once you've got the machine hot, which doesn't take very much, it's a self-sustaining, energy efficient process. You don't need to be throwing fossil fuels or oil electricity into it to keep it going. It keeps itself going from the feedstock. I just don't see much point building a machine that makes biochar that uses a whole heap of fossil fuels to do it. There's just not very many environmental benefits. But ours uses the energy of the feedstock. This is a key point too, because this is about carbon sequestration. So when you're at 500 degrees, which is what we're at, the chart on the left, that's the sweet spot for making a great biochar, huge surface area, good carbon sequestration, good stability as well. In the International Biochar Initiative, Biochar Standard, they've done a lot of work to prove the stability of the biochar so that you can make claims around carbon sequestration. So they've got this test, and we've done the test, and it's not quite a difficult test. And basically, if you have a good hydrogen to organic carbon ratio, that means that you have an extremely stable material that will last for a long, long time in the soil. So we're at 0.35. So we are very, very, you've got to be below 0.7. So we're at less than half what you need to be, which shows that ours is an incredibly stable biochar, which we expected. So I'm just making the point that when people make claims around biochar and carbon sequestration, there's a lot of science behind that statement. So it's not just me saying it. There's a lot of science in there as well. And you can download, when the presentation goes up, I've put the links. You can click on these pictures and it'll take you to the relevant website. So if you want to know more about this, you can jump into the website and you can find the standard, and then you can, in Appendix A, I think or B, one of the appendices talks a lot about carbon sequestration and this test specifically around carbon sequestration of benefits, because really that's one of the key points of biochar. So how does it actually work? So basically, the natural carbon cycle, the terrestrial carbon cycle, let's, for example, use trees as an example. Tree grows. As the tree's growing, it sucks CO2 out of the atmosphere. It lasts, let's say the tree lasts 50 years, and the tree falls over and eventually degrades. It rots down or goes to landfill or gets burned or whatever happens. And all that carbon that it's sequestered is released back to the atmosphere. That is the natural terrestrial carbon cycle. It's a net zero because it sucked the carbon out of the atmosphere 50 years ago, and then you've released it again today. So over a 50-year period, it's net zero. So where biochar comes in, where the chart on the right is the tree grows, sucks the CO2 out, tree falls over, sustainably sourced. That's a key point. Then the tree goes into a machine like ours, and we lock up about 25% of the carbon of what's available in the tree. The remaining 75% goes back to atmosphere, which was going to happen anyway, and that 75% was sucked out 50 years ago when the tree grew in the first place. So really, that 75% that gets released is a net zero, so it's zero. But the 25% that we've locked up, that is the carbon in the biochar that we've locked up. So we're net zero. We're net negative. Then you grow another tree, and now you're in front. So that's how you do it. You're using the trees to get the carbon out of the atmosphere for you, and then you lock it up into the biochar with your pyrolysis machine using a self-sustaining machine, so not pumping fossil fuels in. And then you grow another tree, and you just keep going with it. And so your trees are your carbon capture device, and your biochar machine is your storage device. That's how it works. And then, as per this chart, when you release that other 75%, that's where you can grab heat, you can grab electricity, and you can grab your wood vinegar as well. Like, you might as well try and get as much out as you can while you're getting that 25%. Okay, so I hope that's clear. I should point out too, based on this carbon cycle, there are now established carbon credit schemes available for biochar. One of them is the Puro Earth, based in Europe. So we're just going through that process now to generate carbon credits that we can sell into the carbon market in Europe. The other one is in California. There's a CapCo one that's been running for about 5 years. Unfortunately, it's only relevant to the state of California. But if I was in California and I was making biochar, I would be able to make carbon credits under that scheme, which is from the California government, and generate carbon credits and sell them into the market. At the moment, I'm not doing that, which is fine. But there are carbon credit schemes certified that recognise the benefits of biochar. Okay, look, just quickly, does it sequester carbon long term? So on the left-hand side, this is where biochar came from. It was rediscovered about the 1920s when the British Empire was strong. The geologists were running around in Brazil, up in the Amazon, and they discovered the ancient terra preta soils, and they realised that the ancient indigenous cultures in that area had done something to the soil thousands and thousands of years ago, and whatever they'd done was still there, and it was still working because they had huge productivity in the soils around the terra preta soils, but they just didn't know what they'd done. Anyway, they spent decades looking at it, trying to work out what had happened, and then they worked out it was biochar. They were using ancient biochar techniques from about 2,000 years ago to create a whole civilization based on biochar, and they used that biochar to improve the fertility of their soils and improve their food productivity, and that's how they maintained their strong civilization all those years ago. And that productivity from that biochar is still there and still functioning. And there's the photo of it on the left, okay? And then lo and behold, I saw this paper in 2018. Someone was running around in Africa and discovered the same thing. And so the photo on the right is from a peer-reviewed paper where they ironically carbon dated the carbon from the biochar in Africa, and they showed that it was somewhere between 115 or 692 years old. They weren't quite sure, but it was still there and still active, and the local indigenous population, again, was still using the soils with the biochar generated probably about 500 years ago. So it does have long-term benefits. So that's introduction to biochar. So I'm going to sort of talk about standards now. Anybody got any burning questions or anything there, Shane, on the chat line?
Yeah, so there's a couple of questions. So Jackie, if you're still there, I know you have to rush off, but if you're still there, you had a couple of questions for Adrian.
Sorry, can you put those questions, or Adrian should be able to read them on the chat? So
Oh, can I read them on the chat?
than me.
Is there a chat?
So I do have to start going.
Yeah, no,
Okay,
that's
cool.
all right. Well, it's a
Adrian,
little bit hard for me, Jackie, because I'm
oh yeah, it is.
I'm sharing my screen, so I've got my screen sort of
Oh, okay,
full.
sorry.
No, that's okay.
Let me read them to you, Adrian.
Yeah, go. Yeah, just read it to me.
Okay,
Great.
good.
So the first question that Jackie asked was, would biochar assist in ameliorating the tragedy of misuse of water from the Murray-Darling and the loss of water runoff from tributaries and irrigation systems?
Oh yeah, look, possibly, yeah. I mean, look, effectively, you know, it's a great water absorbent, and it does hang on to water. Yeah, look, it might. Yeah, I mean, I don't know of that application, but look, effectively, I mean, when we run our machine, we yank the char out of the machine. It's hot, and then we quench it, and it just sucks all the water into it and just hangs onto it. And to be honest, we sell it wet because it's so hard to dry it out. So it does hang on to water. So look, I think so. I think so.
And her other question was, can you have excess biochar in soils? Are there any adverse repercussions, or do you need to balance this with other soil properties?
Yeah, okay. So yeah, I wasn't going to go on this, but basically, look, yeah, effectively it's carbon. It's pure carbon in a form that's stable and most beneficial to soils. But that's all it is. It doesn't have nutrient value. So when you're putting it out into the soils, what we do recommend is you put it out at, say, a high application rate will be 50%. That's very, very high. What I recommend is about 20% by volume, and that you've got nutrient-rich materials in there as well. So it helps hang on to the nutrients, and you're not competing with the plants when it's going. So 20% by volume is look, this is for sort of a backyard or a veggie garden. That's a high application rate. Really, with broad acre and large farms, I mean, it's more of an economic question than let's say how much they can put out there. What we say to farmers though is that, they say, all right, look, I've got this much money, I want to put out some biochar. We say, well, that's fine, you can put it out. It's not much, but it's 1,000 years plus, so they can put it out, and then they can come back a year later and they can put it out again, and they just keep adding onto it. You can build the soils up in that way. You don't have to hit it in one big hit. You just keep doing it. So we've got a huge farm up in the Northern Territory that has bought our product 3 or 4 years running, and I mean semi-trailer loads. And they're just slowly, just, with what budget they have, building the carbon up in their soils. I mean, they're not doing 20%. That's more for a very targeted area. So, yeah.
Jeff, and you had several questions as well.
I did, yes. Thanks, Shane. The first one that occurred to me, Adrian, was when you were talking about the various forms of bioenergy technology.
Yep.
And I was just wondering whether you would think of them as competitors or complementary, like whether they occupy sort of different niches, or I was thinking about how pyrolysis is so effective, whether there are mechanisms that could be put in place to ensure that technology kind of gets deployed in preference to others,
Yeah. Well, look, I guess it's about, often the feedstock or whatever it is at the site. I mean, really what you do is you go through a bioenergy feasibility study. So we've done a lot of work in gasification. We've done hydrothermal processing as well. We haven't done much work in anaerobic digestion, but if you've got a really wet, sloppy feedstock like food, anaerobic digestion is possibly the way to go, because it's 75% water, and you're going to struggle with a thermal process like pyrolysis with that one. And that's what Yarra City Water have set up out there at that regen site. They've got their huge facility out there processing food waste, specifically in their anaerobic digester to generate electricity. That's what they're doing. So, so really, but if you've got a drier feedstock like wood, then that opens up some of your options for you. So, for example, in one of my examples I'll be talking later on is, we're doing biosolid sludge plus wood into our continuous machine. So we're getting rid of it that way. So the sludge is wet; it can't be done self-sustaining in a char maker, but you throw some wood into it, and then you've got enough energy to do it. So, Yeah, I guess, as I said at the start, when you're looking at bioenergy, we do like pyrolysis, and it's certainly a technology that I push, because you do get biochar. You get biochar out the other end, and that's beneficial. And look, at the moment, you're going to, like, gasification is going to struggle against pyrolysis, because you get so many benefits out of it.
Mhm.
So, but if you're doing a really big plant and you're just trying to do, waste removal, then possibly, you might do combustion with a steam Rankine cycle on the back end for electricity generation or something like that. It does, to be honest, we're a commercial operation. I operate in a commercial world. The economics do drive it most of the time.
Yeah.
And look, you're up against landfill. So, if it's cheap, often if it's cheaper to landfill, well, that's what they do. They just landfill. But luckily landfill, finally, is expensive. It's super expensive in Sydney. Sydney's, I don't know, $240 a tonne. Melbourne's going that way. I think Adelaide's expensive. Queensland didn't have landfill up until, July last year. And so they had that ridiculous situation of all the waste from Sydney going up to Queensland, because they didn't have landfill tax, So,
Yeah.
it's just economics. So,
And that sort of builds quite nicely into my next question. Actually, I was interested in sort of policy or regulatory interventions, I guess. So landfill levies is one, but that would support the sorts of technologies you're talking about, but also support biochar production that's the most sustainable or optimized sort of form of biochar production. Because I noticed you mentioned, like, there are variations depending on the feedstock and the temperature that it runs at, in terms of the content of the and the quality of the end product. Is there anything that needs to be done to kind of ensure that we're optimizing?
Yeah, I mean, look,
what's being produced.
What I can do is I'll talk about sort of section 4. I'll talk about the feedstocks, and
Cool.
when I'm talking about them, I'll just quickly talk about what that means for a pyrolysis machine and what it means for the biochar as well. Okay, so I'll talk about that, and then you'll get a bit of an understanding of what the implications are technically, and then we can go from there. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
That sounds good. And we just have one final question from Janet, though I think it may have already been covered. Janet, if you want to ask your question, please jump in. Otherwise, but if you think it's been covered, then maybe Adrian, you can move on.
I think it's probably been covered, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure. Okay, so just quickly, I'll keep going now. So just going to talk about standards now. So basically, standards and codes and what institutions are out there around the biochar. So the key one is 2 key ones, 3, 4. Okay, first one is the International Biochar Initiative. So this one, well, this is a group that we've been a corporate member of since their inception in 2010. So we were one of the first organisations to join with these guys, and we've been supporters of them for a long time. I know quite a few of the board members of these guys. So they've got a strong goal. They're aiming for 50, a billion, a gigaton of biochar produced within 50 years, because they see they can get biochar industries up and get it going. And at the same time, we're solving all the other issues around where carbon in the atmosphere comes from. This is a solution. It's one of them. Not all of them. We've talked about soils last month, and let's plant trees back. Let's stop burning fossil fuels, things like that. So this is just one of them, and this is the sector that we're in. So this is the role they play. So they've done some really great work. They support a lot of peer-reviewed research papers. They built the International Biochar Standard as well, the standard that we use. And they've got some really strong goals. So again, when the presentation goes up, there's a link to their website. So everything on their website, the International Biochar Initiative, they produce is peer-reviewed and has got science behind it. They're quite a serious organisation. No, they're very friendly, but they've got serious science behind them, I should say. Okay, then the other one is the Australian New Zealand Biochar Industry Group. So I'm the treasurer of this group, and so I'll just talk quickly back there. So this group, if you're interested, has got a very active Facebook group. On Monday, they're having a conference in July, a Zoom online conference. And also, again, to raise the awareness of biochar, they're having a 100-day biochar blitz. So recommend you join the Facebook group, get involved with them. The Facebook thing's free. And And the blitz is just about stories about where biochar has been used, where's it been successful, what feedstock we've done, just to put positive stories out there around biochar, because one of the key limitations of biochar is it's just no one knows, not many people know about it. Once they find out about it, they become very excited and they love it and they use it in their garden and they get amazing results and they keep coming back, and that's it. It's really about market awareness. So that's why there's a big push from ANSBI in the next month to try and raise the awareness of biochar. So I'd encourage all listeners to get involved with that, because it'll help support ANSBI as well. It's all volunteers, and look, these are the sort of the key goals of ANSBI: sustainable biochar, biomass resources, carbon negative, and doing it well. Basically, number 3 is just doing it properly. So you haven't got a dirty machine that belches smoke everywhere. You've got a clean machine that does it well. A few things, they've done some really, really great pieces of work in the last year. One of them was they have put out a really good report on the value of biochar and wood vinegar. So that's about a culmination of the work in Australia, and we contributed to this as well, of where's biochar being used, how much did it cost, what were the outcomes, and what's the cost benefit analysis of it. And lots of stories there as well. So that's a really good report. That was written by a really great PhD student from UNSW, I think he's from. So a really good piece of work there. And the other thing is we've just released a code of practice for sustainable production and use of biochar in Australia and New Zealand. So this has gone out through ANSBI. It was actually developed by Earth Systems, our company, for ANSBI's use. And again, the key things here is around, it sets out industry best practice for sustainable production, okay, and the use of biochar as well. So, and I've just copied out some key sentences there around, around the point of the code of practice is that we have sustainable biomass resources going into it too. So if you want to be adhering to the code of practice of ANSBI, this is for draft, by the way. So if you want to download it and have a good read of it, and you want to make some comments on it, we'd love to get feedback. So that's what's happening there. So it's a very happening space at the moment, to be honest, in biochar. Like, I've been doing it for 10 years now, and just in the last 12 months, despite COVID and everything like that, it just seems to be really starting to ride that exponential curve in terms of inquiries and people buying it, and there's lots of work happening at the moment. So any pressing, I'm gonna, at the end of the presentation, I can take more questions. Any questions on those sort of 2 key things there? Like, if you want to start and you want to learn more about biochar, they are the 2 places I would point you to initially, and then you can go from there. But they're 2 reputable resources for biochar with people that know what they're doing and have got good interests at heart. So, any pressing questions, Shane?
Nothing's come up. I've actually got a couple, but I might save them to the end, Adrian.
Okay, no worries. Okay, technology options. So I'm going to talk about technology. So look, I've just listed, but I'm going to talk about our technology because I know ours the best. And I'll talk about our case studies, but our technology and the case studies I'm discussing, there are others out there. And in some areas we're doing really well and we are the best. In other areas, others doing better than us. For example, in electricity generation, we don't do that at the moment, which I'd love to, but we don't, and it just hasn't been economically viable for us to develop that bolt-on technology to date. So we haven't done it. Others have. So anyway, we've got some. We've got us. Rainbow Bee Eater is a group that's come out of Western Australia. Pyreg's a German company that's been doing a lot of work in this. Energy Farmers Australia is another group. I know all these people. Energy Farmers Australia is another really good group out of Western Australia. Polytechnic is a very large bioenergy technology out of, I think it might be Austria or somewhere over there, and they've got a really great guy over in New Zealand who sort of represents their technology here as well. So lots of technologies around the world, and Australia is actually we're in a strong position that, like, we actually have quite a few technology suppliers given our size of our population. So on that, just quickly digressing, one of the reasons Australia's in a good position in biochar is that we actually have the resources. When I say resources, we have the biomass resources available to us for a machine like ours and Rainbow Bee Eater or Energy Farmers Australia. And that's because, you know, basically we're a big country, we've got a big footprint, and really there's not a lot of Australians here compared to, say, other countries. So in Europe, for example, all woody biomass is utilised, all of it. They don't have waste biomass available for a machine like ours. Like if we want to make biochar in Europe, we'd have to pay for the feedstock. We'd have to pay to get the timber, to pyrolyse it, and then make the biochar out the other end. Whereas in Australia, it's the reverse. We've got so much timber and so much green waste going to landfill. If you set it up right, you can actually get paid to take the material and divert it from landfill, if you're clever, which is that's actually what we're doing. So Australia does have a unique advantage in that we actually have the biomass resource available to us, sometimes at negative cost, whereas a lot of other countries in the world don't have that. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've got a lot of technology options as well, is because we've got this resource available to us. Okay, I'll talk about the technology. Generally speaking, basically how they work is you have woody waste or rice hulls or, you know, wheat straw or what, you've got a feedstock. It goes into a biochar machine, a pyrolysis technology, and then out the other end, depending on how the pyrolysis technology is set up, you can either get heat, electricity, biochar, and wood vinegar, or all four at the same time. That can be done. Now, what we're doing is we're getting heat, biochar, and wood vinegar. We're not getting electricity, so we're not doing that at the moment. But look, that could be done technically. I'd love to be able to do it, but we're not at the moment. So that's what you can get from pyrolysis. You can get all those things in one big hit from one feedstock, and if the machine's done well, it'll run self-sustaining, and you won't even need to put fossil fuels in it. It'll just run by itself using the energy of the feedstock. So that's why they're great. Okay, you got different options. You can get transportable machines. So that's one of our machines on the left. It's we do make transportable ones. The reason we make some of ours are fixed and some of them are transportable. The reason we make them transportable is that often collecting the biomass and bringing the biomass back to a bioenergy plant will stuff up the economics. It takes a lot of money to go collect it and bring it back. If you can take the machine to the biomass, you save money, and so that can work. So that we did. This is a Pyrig machine on the right. That's a fixed machine. So obviously that machine you can't move. So you need to bring the bio in it. You need to bring the biomass to it. So there's different configurations. So again, look, heat uses, just quickly going through these. So on our machine, we make a lot of heat. Often we've got a thermal oxidizer that'll be fanning along at 1100. Where I've seen 1290 degrees coming out of thermal oxidizer. That's incredibly hot. 1290 degrees. That's really, really high grade heat. So if you've got an industrial process that needs heat, hardly any industrial processes need that much, but it's available. And these are just some of the things you can use it for. So we do have heat exchangers on our system. We use the heat. We run a dryer from our free waste heat. Greenhouse heating and CO2 addition, like the Rainbow Bee Eater unit in South Australia does that. So they create excess heat and they put it into the greenhouse to heat the greenhouse. That's a great idea. And they also use a bit of CO2 to up the CO2 inside the greenhouse. Obviously not too much, otherwise people will die, but the plants love it, they grow more. So that's a pretty smart use of the excess heat. Electricity, as I said, we don't do it, but others do. There are off-the-shelf options for this. You can do organic Rankine cycle, steam cycle, different things. Rainbow Bee Eaters developed one that they've got in their South Australia unit. Often electricity production on a pyrolysis machine, often it adds a lot of cost to a machine. That's why we haven't done it to date, because it's prohibitively expensive. But look, the advantage is you're generating carbon negative electricity, which is incredibly unique. And it has been done before, and Rainbow Bee Eater have done it. So well done to them. So I'll just quickly talk about the char maker. Look, this is our machine. As I said, there's other machines out there. I won't spend too long on these because it's not really what we're here. But look, basically, we've got a char maker. This is the one we developed in 2010. We invented it. Earth Systems invented this technology. We built it. Look, we've got a few machines around the place. One of them's here in Australia, which I'll talk about the case studies, and we've got one in Hong Kong, and we've just put one to Israel as well. So this machine, you can put in logs, sticks and branches, it does its thing, and then you get the biochar, the wood vinegar and the heat out the other end. So that machine here, the one in the video, in the photo, this is the machine we've got out at Manningham City Council, this particular machine here. This is the one we run pretty much every day. We've also got a continuous process machine. So this is more, so this batch machine is a bit unique, is it not? Most people don't do batch, most people do continuous. So this is a bit of a unique machine. Whereas this one, the continuous machine, this is more traditional pyrolysis technology. So this machine here, the one you're looking at, I literally just put this into Israel about 3 weeks ago. So that's been a challenge, trying to get that thing going from Melbourne. But anyway, we've done it, and you know, I was meant to be there getting it all back together, but anyway, we've got there. So anyway, this is another machine here. So this is for small. So the batch machine does big logs. This machine does small fraction material. Okay. You know, look, our machine, like other sophisticated pyrolysis machines, have got good computer controls. They're all automatic, and I can run the Israeli unit, my Melbourne machine, and the Hong Kong machine. I can run them from my phone here in Melbourne, or my laptop as well. You can hook into them and run them and do software and updates and troubleshoot, those sorts of things. So, and I guess, look, that's the key point too, is that depending on how often they run, like this is what they sequester, depending on the scale and what they're running on and how hard they run. This is how many tons of CO2e they'll sequester per year per machine. So that's what they do. They just take timber that would otherwise be released back to the atmosphere through natural processes and lock it up. So so that's what they do. So and they're commercialized and they're good to go. Us and others as well. Our machine is patented, other machines are patented. So we've gone through the long patenting process and what they've done. Okay. Any quick questions there about the char maker and other technologies as well, or?
There's nothing there, Adrian, but I'll ask a question. So
Sure.
Can you talk about the how the process starts? So obviously you've got to heat it up to begin with, and so can you perhaps just talk about what is required to get the process started and how that works?
Yeah. So obviously you got to get it started somehow, right? But you need some kind of energy source. You know, wood just doesn't catch fire in winter on its own by looking at it. So on our machine, we've got a small packaged diesel burner. So we do use a small quantity of diesel fuel to get our machine running. But as soon as the wood gas comes out of the machine and it can run on wood gas, it turns that diesel burner off as fast as possible and then runs on the wood gas that comes out of the wood. So yeah, so that is a bit of a negative on our machine. And look, to be honest, most other you got to start them somehow. It's either LPG or natural gas or diesel. We're just working on a machine in Europe, and also actually for our machine here in Melbourne, we are thinking we're going to try and flip our diesel burners over to biodiesel. It's a bit of mucking around. You got to change quite a few parts actually, but we're going to try and get into biodiesel. But look, we've done the carbon footprint. I'm going to talk about this later in the presentation. We've done the carbon footprint on our process, including the diesel used for ignition, and the diesel really is the amount of carbon we sequester in the biochar compared to the amount of diesel that we use is the biochar is way more, like 2 orders of magnitude more. So so it's a small price to pay. It's not much. You're talking 10 or 15 liters of fuel, you know, to get the thing up and going. So it's not too much. So yeah.
Great. Yep. Please continue.
Okay, no worries. All right. So now the other, okay, so I'll just talk about these. So these are some of the feedstocks that we've run on, and others as well. So it's not just us, but these are just some of the feedstocks that are available out there. And this is a long list. So if you've got a resource out there that you see that's not being utilised, is being burnt, just pushed back into the ground, going to landfill, or not being utilised well, or not being recycled or whatever it is, then it's potentially a feedstock for pyrolysis. So we've done, on the left-hand side, you've got all of these different tree species that we've done. You've got unchipped, green waste, processed timber. So we've done We've done MDF, particle board, plywood, all those things as well. So if you have a smart system that can handle those sorts of, there are other chemicals in there. If you've got a back end system that can handle the emissions, which ours can, and we've done the stack testing to prove it, then you can target all of those materials, and all of the processed timbers they just go to landfill, most of them. Wood pallets, they just get smashed up, and often they end up back in landfill as well. Biosolids, massive problem around the world. What do they do with them? They stockpile them, they don't know what to do with them. Coconut shells, we've done them. But tyres is an interesting one. We have done tyres. You can pyrolyse tyres. We're not necessarily set up for tyres, but there are tyre pyrolysis specific technologies, but they're mostly around oil. But funnily enough, we ran tyres for our machine, and we got tyre char out the other end, and steel, and an incredible amount of heat in a self-sustaining process, and clean as well. Invasive species, so that's a massive problem. So we've done cypress trees that have been infected with cypress canker. We've done a fair bit of work with Manningham Council, where they've brought in infected grasses and invasive species. It's very interesting actually at the moment with climate change, as the temperature rises. What Manningham Council is seeing these invasive species come in that they haven't seen before. But as the temperatures, we're 1.05 degrees above ambient now, above, pre-industrial times. These invasive species are coming in, whereas they hadn't seen them before. And they don't know what to do with them. How do they kick them out? So they've actually brought a whole heap of they've brought a whole heap of material to us, and they've said, can you treat this? Because we don't want, this million seeds getting out there and just spreading through our municipality. So we've paralysed it, which creates biochar and certainly destroys the seed and solves the problem. On the right-hand side, there's some more material here. We've done hemp, bamboo, tomato vines waste, sawmill offcuts, forestry residue. So in forestry, when they do all their forestry works, they end up with their huge piles of timber that they don't know what to use. Construction demolition waste, cotton tin trash. Cotton tin trash is a huge problem in the cotton industry. Railway sleepers, there's just hundreds of thousands of railway sleepers around. Waste materials, we have actually, funnily enough, done nappies, to my surprise, because nappies are actually about 35–40% wood. All that absorbent material inside the nappy is actually wood. We pyrolyzed it, we got biochar at the other end. So there you go, nappies. We also did, and I'll show you some photos, we did some green waste that had a lot of plastic strewn through it. So that was a material that was virtually unusable by anybody. And the plastic, hydrocarbon-based plastics are okay, so polyethylene, polypropylene, because they add energy to the process, and any residuals get cleaned up in the thermal oxides. And we thermally cleaned it. We got this great biochar product out the end and heaps of heat. So, and look here, just some of the photos. There's the tyre run that we did. So there's the wood pallet packaging. Just quickly, you can't do treated pine. You have to stay away from treated pine, and there are quite a few plastics you have to stay away from. So we're very careful about what we do. There are some materials you just can't pyrolyse, and CCA timber is definitely one of them. Demolition waste, railway sleepers, wood chip. That's what they're running on in Israel at the moment. Water clearing works. So this photo on the top right, this is where the char maker came from in 2009. Was all the riparian water management works that the Victorian government does, taking the poplar and willow trees out of the riverways to increase the water flow. And then they heap these huge piles of timber up and they burn them. That's what they do. That's what they've always done. And they wanted a solution to that. And that's where the char maker came from. So our char maker, they've got one. Their char maker goes into that wood pile and they pyrolyse that. And normally that would get burnt. So, and there's some biosolids on the bottom left that we've done. Oh yeah, and here's the biohazardous materials that I was telling you about. So the cypress canker, which is the infected cypress trees, and the so for Manningham, we did the Chilean needlegrass. They brought that to us and said, can you please get rid of this material and make sure it doesn't get out. And then we did a lot of work. This straw stubble one, this was for a Chinese project actually. They have a huge straw stubble problem over there. They just burn everything and it creates a lot of smog in China. So we did some straw stubble for them. So these are just some of the feedstocks that you can do. There's the nappies, rice hulls. There's that plastic contaminated waste I was telling you about. That went through very well. So you can see the plastic in the photo there, and out the other end, you just got clean, beautiful biochar and heat. no nasty emissions as well. So it can be incredibly useful if you've got a troublesome feedstock that's difficult to deal with. So we've got and that photo in the middle of municipal greenways. That's what we're running on at the moment at Manningham. Any quick questions there?
There's several questions, and Michael had a question about maybe one way you could start rather than using diesel. Michael, if you're there, you might ask your question.
It just occurred to me when you were saying that the waste oil from fish and chip shops, I know that's been a problem in the past.
Yeah.
Or oil from car servicing, or is that all recycled now?
No. Well, that's a funny one, Mike. Actually, good to see you. We had a crack at making our own biodiesel, actually, and we made it from So actually, getting hold of oil from fish and chip shops can be a bit tricky, actually. So we made our own biodiesel on site, and we gave it a go, and it worked great. So yeah, look, the answer is yes, if you can get hold of it. I'm not so sure about car oil. I'm not sure that the diesel burners they're pretty fussy, but the biodiesel's fine. It's clean. Not sure about the car engine oil. Not sure. But look, I've seen waste oil burners, but I don't know about car engine oil. I'm not sure.
And Andy had a question about the nappies. Andy, you there?
Yeah, just had to unmute myself. Oh, I was just interested to see what the outcome was of the nappy trial. And look, we're going to see soon.
Yeah. No, look, it's a huge problem. Look, it went really well. We did manufacturing waste nappies, so they were clean, and we also did some dirty ones, which was interesting. It was a funny run. Anyway, well, look, we did it, and even on the wet ones, they got huge absorbent material. It was very, very wet. But look, the machine was, our goal is always to create a self-sustaining process. I hate throwing fossil fuels in to keep it hot. So the nappies had enough energy in them to do it. And we got a really good char product out the other end, actually. And because it gets to 500 degrees, any pathogens, or let's say, it doesn't necessarily have to be children. If you've got adult nappies from an aged care facility, if they've got, often they're on a lot of pharmaceuticals or whatever. If you've got any of those materials in there, they are destroyed by the process. So it cleans everything up. Huge amount of heat out the back end, and So it works. So we're still working with the company actually that had the nappy issue, and let's see where that one goes. But it can be done. So I guess that was the point of that section is, here are some of the, I'm not running on the nappies today. I'm not doing that. I'm sticking to clean tree prunings. So I have a clean woody biomass, and I've got clean biochar coming out the other end, and I maintain my organic certification for green Man Char. That's what I'm doing. But as part of it, developing our technology and helping other organisations look at the opportunities around pyrolysis. These are some of the feedstocks that I've done and others have done. And in my mind, a lot of them would be regarded as sustainable because otherwise they're going to landfill. Yeah. I know there's controversy around disposable nappies, and aside from that, though, at the moment they're going to landfill. So if you did tap into it, potentially you could argue it's a sustainable resource if you're saving it from going to landfill. So yeah, it's just they're more sort of examples of what can be done with pyrolysis.
And Sarah had a question about just who else is using it? Who else is using the technology? Which councils are? Sarah, can you ask a question?
Sorry, just interested to know how many local councils are taking up this option.
One. Manningham. And Manningham have been really great and very, very supportive of us. But we're there. They're doing it because it's our technology, it's our machine, and we're operating it as well. Look, we've had a lot of other councils come out, look, hopefully others. Yeah, we've been there since 2016 now, so it's on 4.5, 5 years. You know, we've pioneered the method, so hopefully other councils move forward on this. So let's see. Let's see. I mean, look, to be honest, we've got a lot more opportunities internationally than in Australia, despite the fact that we have, as I said earlier, the biomass resources here. So I'm not really sure why, but it's just the way it is at the moment. So, but look, you know, we've got our own machine. We've got green Man Char, so you know, like there's a biochar machine running every day, thanks to our efforts, and we've made it available to the market. And so look, let's see where it goes. I think the next 12 months are going to be incredibly interesting.
Adrian, perhaps just a question from me. Can you just talk to and maybe I don't know whether you cover this, but can you talk to the economics? How does it I mean, there's obviously these carbon benefits, so they're worth something, and it depends on how the councils may want to account for some of those carbon benefits. But but I think you've indicated that Manningham is mainly interested in it from the perspective of removing a resource removing something that would otherwise go to landfill. Is that
yeah? I mean, the economics are quite simple. You know, we've got a machine, you know, we're diverting not all of it. We're diverting probably half of our feedstock. We're diverting from landfill. So that's a big saving for the council right there. Landfill is expensive, and let alone getting it there. You've got to get the excavator to get into the truck, then you've got to take the truck to landfill because they're big volumes. It's not a trailer; it's a big volume of material. The other material they've got, you know, is mulched and sold by third parties as a sort of a compost mulch material. But again, that costs money as well. As it should. They're providing a service, and so effectively we're providing a service for them to sort of dispose of this material for them. So yeah, you know, there is a small income generating benefit to us there. But look, the majority of the income is made from the sales of the biochar and the wood vinegar products, you know, through our store there. So that's the economics.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so just following on, so the state government's going to this 4-bin system, and so I'm not sure what the Victorian government's plans are for that green bin that they're going to start collecting. That's going to have both, you know, household food waste plus more conventional green waste. I'm not sure where they're planning what they're planning to do with that, but obviously it would seem that's going to be an enormous resource that's just being collected in a fairly sustainable way, I guess. That's going to be kept. That the council are going to be collecting that. So is that? I know you said for food waste is not great for pyrolysis, but could it be used could the green plus green waste?
Look, yeah, I mean, it's a bit like the biosolids, right? The biosolids are, you know, depending on when you get them, and if they've been through a belt press or a centrifuge or whatever it is, you know, they'll be 80% water. So we've managed to do it by mixing it with other materials that are energy rich. So same with food. Food on average is about 75% moisture content. Like, you're going to struggle to put that through a thermal process. So what you do is, yeah, you mix it with something else that's got energy, and then get the energy balance right. And then, yeah, so look, the answer is yes, you could probably do it. I guess one of the limitations is, you know, the biochar industry, we haven't got the massive scale needed to solve, you know, the big high volume throughputs that are seen with the curbside collection. You know, they're talking hundreds of thousands of tons, and you know, the sector hasn't got the scale needed. So it's a bit of a catch-22. We can't get the scale because we can't get the project. Can't get the project because we can't get the scale. I think that's part of it. And also, I think it's an educational thing too. Like, potentially, you know, as I said at the start, you know, the biochar is it's an ancient technology, and it's an ancient product, but it's new here now. I mean, it's not new for us or for me, but for a lot of sectors, it's new and unknown. I mean, look, from my perspective, all technical risk is solved, well, majority of it, with our machines. But often there's technical risk and there's economic risk, and there's all these things that come into play. And so, but look, I haven't really looked too closely at the curbside side of things and what's happening at the moment. It does seem to change a lot, particularly with all of our recycling, you know, issues that we've had. Yeah, so I'm not sure, but look, I'm sure there's a feedstock that's going to landfill or going to. I mean, often what they do with the curbside is they compost it. They just compost it. Composting's, you know, big, relatively quick, and can handle big volumes at low cost. You know, you just spread it out or windrow it and do it that way. So and so that's probably, I assume that's what they're going to be doing with it. I'm not sure.
Right. And Andy has a couple of questions as well. Andy, are you there?
Yep. Okay, they're quite unrelated to one another, these two questions, but is there capacity at your Manningham machine to accept waste from other councils?
That's a good question, actually. Yeah. But we're looking at that very, very recently, actually. Because Manningham, due to circumstances that they're in, which I think they've solved, but anyway, they ran out. And we've just been, there's just been so many orders. We've been really struggling to sort of keep up, and then we ran out of feedstock as well. So I think we'll get through. But look, sure. I think potentially. I think potentially that's a possibility. Yeah.
And is it located on council land, and is there space there to accept waste from other people?
Yeah, look, we'd have to, you know, it is their land. Like we've set up, what we've done is we're right in their depot. And the reason we've done that is we've not, one of the things that kills most bioenergy business cases is the transport of the biomass, because often the biomass has got zero or negative value. It's worth nothing. Particularly if it's not in a form that can be reused or reutilized. So what we've done is we've set up right next to their green waste depot, like we're literally, you know, 3 meters from it. So, you know, there's no change to practice for them. They just bring their green waste in how they've always done it and put it there, and then we grab it from there. And so there's no transport. We don't need a truck. We're not on the road. We don't need excavators and all that other stuff to move it around. We just go get it. And so that's probably been the key, actually, to the business case, is that we've knocked that really big, difficult part of the business case out by just not having to transport the biomass. So in answer to your question, it is a pretty big depot and there's a fair bit of space there, but that would have to, it's their site,
yeah, and
we'd have to work it out with them.
Okay, and my next question was, how does biochar compare to traditional Indigenous coal burning? And was this how the
that's a good question.
Africans did it?
Yeah, no. So traditionally, they think in the terra preta soils that they dug big trenches in the ground, got the fires going, loaded it up with all the char, and then covered it with dirt, and then put enough little holes in it to create a slow smouldering pyrolysis conditions. And then when it had finished, they then covered the rest of the little holes up, and that's how they made their biochar. Now in Africa, in that study, funnily enough, they, from memory, this is a long time ago, they interviewed, you know, the people that were still living on the land, and they were still practicing the same methods that had been passed down from generation to generation. So they were still doing it the same way from 500 years ago when they made it. So again, I think it was what's called pit kiln, where you dig a big hole and you sort of pyrolyze it in there. So I mean, look, when you have an Australian bushfire, you do create, at the heart of the fire, you create pyrolysis conditions, which is hot and no air, because the air can't get in because it's been consumed by the time it gets to the heart of the fire. So So you definitely create pyrolysis conditions in a fire. It's just that it's in a very uncontrolled manner. So, look, probably with a cool burn, no, I'm not as familiar with it, but it's likely you may create pyrolysis conditions. You probably do create a bit of biochar. Yes, probably.
I've definitely heard people say that wood vinegar and things like that are created by the cool burns. So I just wondered.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
I'm no expert.
Probably. No, that's a good question. Well, to be honest, some of the things to sort of look at a bit closer, actually, to understand more about it.
Thanks.
Adrian, I think maybe just continue.
Okay. I'm going to rip through these case studies. So these are our case studies. There are definitely other case studies out there, but these will give you an idea of just what can be done with pyrolysis. Again, this is an introduction to pyrolysis and the technology and of the biochar side of things as well. So again, I've already talked about this. Here's Manningham City Council. It's a bit out of date. We've been there almost 5 years now. And we take their green waste, we put it in a machine there with our wheel loader, and we pyrolyse it, and then we make biochar, wood vinegar and heat. And look, we had to go through the permitting process, but that was okay. And we got the organic certification as well, which was really good. And look, what we're doing there is, I mean, you know, I've discussed all the different feedstocks you can pyrolyse, which is very vast. But what we're doing is we're just, you know, as I said, Australia, we're lucky. We've got so many biomass resources at our fingertips. You know, we've just stuck to clean tree prunings, so we get a really low risk product. It just makes it easy for us. We don't have to worry too much about Q&A on the biochar product at the back end because nothing's gone at the front end. So yeah, so that's what we do there. So I guess the key findings is we're delivering cost savings to the council compared to landfilling, and composting as well. And look, you know, hopefully, actually, we're building a bigger machine to complement the one that we've got now, starting next week. So that site's about to double in scale. Just quickly how it works: you throw the material in the machine, you put it into the machine, you pyrolyze it. So here's that picture in the middle. That is pyrolysis occurring inside the char maker. So that's wood gas being combusted inside the char maker and spreading its heat. And that's just the control system on the left-hand side. And there's the high-grade heat coming out of the flue on the right-hand side. And there's a sort of these are all the different products that we've got. And there's a semi-trailer load about to go. I don't know where that was going, but somewhere. So we make a lot of it. Oh yeah, so this is an important point. So this one here, we used the California carbon methodology for biochar, which is specifically for biochar. And we went through it and we accounted for the fuel use in the wheel loader, the cars to drive to and from site, the ignition burner, which we've already talked about. And then we looked at how much biochar we made, and we looked at the carbon content of the biochar, and then we looked at the stability of the biochar. And then we went through the long process that the CAPCOA GHGX specifies. And we worked out we had a net sequestration of about 0.324 tonnes of CO2e per tonne of feedstock. Okay, so that's a really key point. So it is negative, right? Now then what we did though, is then we looked at, okay, what would have happened with that green waste if we didn't pyrolyse it? It would have gone to landfill. So what happens in landfill? And again, in the CAPCOA methodology, it talks about, okay, did it go to landfill? What kind of landfill did it go to? How much material would have gone there? And it's got a formula there to look at, you know, what are the methane emissions as the material biodegrades over time inside the landfill. And so taking into account the business as usual case, which is landfill, and our carbon sequestration benefit of 0.324, you end up with a net saving of 0.83 tonnes of CO2e per tonne of green waste that we pyrolyse at that site. So every tonne that we process from their green waste pile, we sequester almost a tonne of CO2e. That's what we do. And that takes into account all the diesel and my car and the electricity and everything. Takes into account of all of it. It's a full carbon footprint. So there you go. It is negative. Case study 2, just another example. We had our machine in there at the Preston Tram depots when they were pulling up the floor of the Preston Tram depot. All the wooden blocks there, it was all Yarra, and they had just hundreds of tons of this beautiful Yarra wooden blocks, but they couldn't, they had to send it to landfill. They weren't allowed to use it for anything else. And we came along and said, well, we can pyrolyse it for you. And they said, great, pyrolyse it. So we did. And we made a lot of biochar from that material. But it was just a short-term project, because once we pyrolysed it all, obviously it was over. But that was a really good feedstock. So that's a really good example of industrial wood that was going to landfill as per their EPA permit. They had to send it to landfill. They had no other choice. And if we hadn't have been there, that material would be in landfill right now. The third one is a really good study. So this one's the Dairy Farm Botanical Garden. So this is the very large botanical gardens in Hong Kong. They came and visited us in 2015 when we were in Victoria with 2 char makers side by side, and really liked our technology, and talked about what they're trying to do. Is they're trying to take their botanical gardens back to native. Now, ironically, they've got a lot of eucalyptus trees planted through their botanical gardens, which surprised me. And that's a result of the British Empire back in the 1800s. You know, they were in control of Hong Kong. They got the British Empire got the best foresters in their empire, which happens to be the Australians at the time. And they said, right, get over here and reforest Hong Kong for us. We need the wood. And so they brought the gum trees with them, and they planted out Hong Kong with gum trees. So there's gum trees all over the place in Hong Kong. So what they're trying to do is take it back to native, indigenous, sorry. And also, ironically, what they're trying to do is they've done a lot of work trying to repatriate the denuded hillsides of Hong Kong. There's been so much poor land management practice of the hills of Hong Kong over the last 500-700 years that a lot of the topsoil is washed away. And they've done a lot of research showing that biochar is one of the only products that can hang in there and create a substrate for trees, grasses, and whatever to grow. So they're trying to push forest back up the hills of Hong Kong. That's what they're trying to do, and biochar is the only sort of solution they've got. That's why they bought our machine, was to get rid of the eucalypt trees, and they needed the biochar. They're not selling it; they're using it for their own purposes inside their own botanical gardens. That's it's a really great closed loop story. So we went over there and popped it in, and they wanted water bidding as well, and we've got a heat exchanger on it, and look, there's the installation there. So there's the feedstock on the left, trees, and they've got a lot of chainsaw crews running around keeping the botanical garden safe for all the visitors, and to get rid of the eucalyptus and acacia trees as well. So it's funny, I got over there and I was like, okay, what's your feedstock? And they said, oh, it's this gum tree. And I said, oh, what's that doing there? I was like, great, I know that'll work, because that's what I run on every day. So we had the machine fired up and did its thing. So that's the installation there. So these are the hillsides. So this is their research. So it's a bit hard to see, but all those little flags are little trees that they've planted. This is their research. So all the flags in the distance are white. So they're trees planted with no biochar. All the trees that are a bit closer are blue, and they are planted with biochar. So this is their research site, and this is where they showed that it worked, and this is how they got the budget to actually get a big machine like ours and move it forward. They've been doing this for 10 years. And so there it is. We've trucked it in, and that's the head of the botanical gardens there. Very, very happy. And here he is. This is him pointing to his research site. This is right on top of the botanical gardens. You can see where they're trying to and what they're trying to do is they're trying to lead the way. So they solve it. They solve with the botanical gardens, and then others can follow, using biochar to sort of solve the environmental soil issues that they've got. The last case study, this is a very recent one actually. This is the one, so we've just chucked a continuous char maker into a really great company called Compostor in Israel. So these guys do biosolids and green waste, and they compost it. And they're really keen. Got very poor soils in Israel and hot desert-like conditions, and they really want biochar to get over there and help with their food production in Israel. So so this is a picture of the machine that we put there, And you know, I only sent it in March, and when I sent it, I thought, oh, it's all good. I'll get over there and put this thing together. But then, you know, we've had the pandemic, and it's been a bit of a challenge getting this thing put back together. But anyway, they got it done, which was really good. And also, I had the advantage. I'd run this machine for a few months in Melbourne, so it was very, very well commissioned. And every, you know, they just had to get it back together. And also, it's got all the technology in it as well, so I'm able to operate this machine from Melbourne. So for training, I was most concerned about training. I want to make sure I train them and that they don't hurt themselves, and they create good biochar and they don't hurt the machine. So I've been able to do that. Yeah, so here they are. This is just a picture of them. It's very hot, lots of flies over there. So this is them putting it together, and that's the biochar they made, and that's the feedstock there. You can see the wood chip and the biosolids there going in. Yeah, so that's another example of a machine there. So I'll just talk a little bit about the end users. Again, these are just sort of where people have used it. I guess it's just to give you a splattering of where biochar gets used. So I guess, you know, gardens, agriculture, horticulture, stock. So stock feed additive is a very interesting one. We've been selling a lot into stock feed as a stock feed additive. You add it at about 1% by mass, dry basis to a stock feed. It goes into the gut of the animal and creates a huge surface area for beneficial gut microbes to grow, they've discovered. And so you get better animals, healthier animals, less antibiotics needed. They put on more weight, less methane emissions. So that's a really, really big outcome there. So a lot of work going into that field at the moment. We're not as involved in that. We're more suppliers, but very exciting area. Pasture, water filter, you know, effectively, you know, back at the start of the presentation, I had the properties of the char. You've got a surface area of between 300 and 700 meters square per gram. It's in the activated carbon range. So if you want to use it as water filtration, you can. It will do a very good job. Odor control. We just helped another company very recently, had a significant odor problem with sulfur coming off one of their processes. They're running their flue gases through the biochar, and it stopped the odor problem. Again, more as an activated carbon type arrangement, but you know, we're sort of order of magnitude cheaper than activated carbon. So activated carbon is extremely expensive. So just another interesting outlet. Nurseries, wineries, community groups. So just some of these pictures here. So all these pictures are from our work. So you can see there in the middle, we've got the windrow, we've got the rose. So that's from a Northern Territory organic farmer there. The one on the left is from an organic garlic grower. So he got 30 or 32% increased growth in his garlic farm from the biochar. In the middle there, you can see a couple of people on a pond. We did some fish effluent water filtration trials, trying to solve a problem for a fish farmer. And here we are, here the lady in the lab coat was doing some work at RMIT. We support students a lot with some of the work they do there. Here's just some more examples. So this is the ones on the bottom, the three on the bottom. This is my own personal trial. So got my kids stuck into it. I had a very bad backyard as a result of too many BMXs banging up and down my backyard. And so I got the kids to crush the biochar and spread it because they'd created the problem. And then put some grass seed out, and then we got really good results with the grass. The top middle, that's a Northern Territory farmer. That's a very big farmer, and they're spreading, that's biochar going out with their seeds and fertilizer into a windrow arrangement before they put in their particular horticultural crop. That's that one there. And the last one is, this is a funny one. We've got Anton here next to his orchid. So again, not so much the biochar, but again, professing the uses of pyrolysis. So Anton was the South Australia Orchid Grower of the Year. And he won every competition he went into, refused to tell anybody how he'd done it, but eventually he cracked and started telling people. So it was the biochar, but it was the wood vinegar in particular. The wood vinegar on orchids apparently has an incredible outcome. To my surprise, to be honest, because wood vinegar you would think is more suited for natives. I mean, I think fire, our fire landscape, but no, he did really well with the orchids. So So just some more. I guess another one here too is I haven't got any photos here. We've done a lot of work with Burnley campus, Melbourne University, with their green roof team. Our biochar is on their green roof, and we actually created our course biochar was created on advice from them. So on a green roof, you really can't get a better product than our course biochar as a proportion of the substrate to sit on the green roof. It doesn't slump, it's light, doesn't degrade, it holds water, it holds nutrients, but it drains. And as a proportion, you can't, obviously, as I said at the start, it's not a nutrient material. You do need more materials in there, but they've got a great mix. So we did a lot of work with them. Our initial char product was too big, so we changed our screens, and now we've got a really beautiful product for green roofs. So we've actually sold a fair bit into green roofs into landscape architect companies are doing green roofs for different people. Yeah, so there you go. Oh, I guess the last one too is a compost enhancement. A lot of work coming out of America where they started to use biochar and compost at the beginning of the process. And what they're finding is it does two things. A, it speeds it, well, it does a few things. It speeds the process up because you've got more beneficial microbes in the compost to help the process. Number two, it's not my area, but there was a group in America that measured the microbial populations post the compost process and discovered that they had significantly higher beneficial microbes than the other ones. I don't know their names, I don't know what they are, but they were quite surprised at the different microbial populations that were in there compared to, say, normal. And thirdly, now you got biochar in your compost, and also the biochar's been through the compost process, so it's water and nutrient loaded up. So when you put it out, it will be good to go in the soil. So that's an interesting one there. Yeah, so that's the presentation. Any questions?
Awesome. Thank you, Adrian.
That's okay.
Jeff had a question to Jeff.
Yeah, this is a very general question, Adrian, but just wondering, I mean, this stuff seems amazing. What are the barriers to growing sustainable production? I mean, you mentioned before kind of the chicken and egg problem with scale. Is it largely a demand side problem, or is the supply side in terms of sustainability a problem as well?
Yeah, look, that's a good question, and something that we sort of mull over at work too, around what can we do to sort of lift this. And I guess, that's the work of what ANSB's doing right now. Right now they're trying to raise the awareness and raise the profile of the biochar sector. Not necessarily just us, but just the sector. They're trying to bring professionalism to it, give it a face. We've got the 100-day blitz going on. The bioenergy roadmap is closing today, I think, and we're inputting in on that as well. So there's a lot happening in the space at a high level and a commercial level. But look, I think with answer to your question, I think it is a little bit around an outlet situation. I mean, that's one of the reasons we launched Green Man Char, was so we're like, well, someone's got to get out there and start getting this stuff out there so people use it and create a market. And that's what we've done. And look, it's growing and it's growing sustainably. I'm not too concerned, to be honest, around finding feedstocks in Australia. Like in Europe, it's different, and in Asia as well. But in Australia, I'm not too concerned about finding feedstock. Every time I read, a report from Sustainable Victoria about what goes into landfill, it always seems to have a high proportion of organic material. Whether it's clean enough or not, or whether you're going to have risks or whatever. I guess big picture, stepping outside of Earth Systems and Green Man Char, big picture is around, how much risk are we prepared to take around, do we hold back because we're concerned about what's going in the front end of a big pyrolysis machine, or do we take a bit of risk, acknowledging, maybe there'll be some emissions every now and then that are of concern, but we have to get emissions, we have to get carbon out of the atmosphere. So we've just got to get this done. So I don't know what the answer to that question is, to be honest. But, you know, when you look at the science, you know, we've got 10 years to sort of get hard onto the path of going backwards. So yeah. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the answer to that particular question is around risk. But look, you know, we don't have to answer that question right now. There's plenty of feedstocks out there. I mean, every council depot's got a green waste pile going through it.
Yeah, tackle the low-hanging fruit first, and then sort of
that's right.
iterate from there. Yeah.
But I mean, obviously, you know, I showed you all the different feedstocks you can do. You know, you can tackle really crappy feedstocks that have got plastic bags through them to a point. You know, they can't be, you know, they're not beneficial for anybody else. So you might as well tackle crap like that nobody else can really deal with, because why not? It's there. So you'd probably start with things that other people aren't doing. If you've got a really pristine wood chip mulch pile that makes a really beautiful compost product that's really useful on a garden or something, I don't know, you probably just stick with that, and then start tackling stuff that is more difficult, that the pyrolysis can just deal with extremely well, you know, such as contaminated green waste, plastic bags, or well, you know, I mean, to a point, the biosolids is an interesting one. Like the biosolids has got a massive problem with microplastics through it. I saw a great presentation at the last Biochar conference where they had SEM photos of biosolids, and there was just microplastics all through it. And then they had another SEM photo post-process, and it was as if someone had gone in there with a broom and swept them all out. It was just totally clean. So that's probably a good one. Just as an example. I mean, there are other outlets for biosolids at the moment. I'm not saying you have to do it that way, but yeah. But I think actually that was an example. I should have put in my presentation. One project to look at is the Stockholm Biochar project. So there's a really great group over there that have been pioneering the way for the world. And so what they've done is that they've got the Stockholm and Swedish government behind them, and the Swedish government, or the Stockholm government, I'm not sure, has mandated if you plant a tree, or if you dig up a road, or if you do a whole heap of all these XYZ activities in Stockholm, you must put biochar down in great quantities when you do it. That's their standard practice now. And so by doing that and just having this one piece of legislation, they created a huge market for the product. And so suddenly they're like, oh, we need biochar. So off they went. So then they got a machine and they got feedstock, and they just solved it all because they created end-use demand. That's how Stockholm's done it. They just created end-use demand. And then, and funnily enough, they've gone back 2 or 3 years. I've met the people doing this project. They've gone back a couple of years later, and there's been all these additional benefits that have come out of it that they didn't even predict were going to be there. For example, they're putting the biochar underneath all the roads now, and suddenly the biochar is really good, as I said, at activated carbon properties. It's a really good at filtering heavy metals. So any heavy metals that come off the tires and the cars, or any oils that drip off the cars from trucks or whatever it is, they just don't have in their, you know, the roadside verges anymore, because the biochar's filtering it all out. So they're getting really clean water. They're getting huge tree growth. They've done streets with the biochar and streets without it. They need way less water on the streets that got biochar. Huge tree growth. You know, sort of. You know, they've got trees that are 3 years old that, you know, look like they're 10 years old. So they just can't believe how quick it goes. So that's what they've done. So something like that would be extremely beneficial, where, you know, there was sort of a mandated requirement for it. That would help the industry significantly, I think. That's just one example of what could be done. So yeah.
Adrian, can you just perhaps talk about the so you've got an organic certification for the product. To get that organic certification, does that mean you need to have clean feedstock going in? And if you were to have contaminated feedstock, you couldn't get that organic certification?
No, not necessarily. Like even for our site, like we've got, you know, like we've got a really, really clean feedstock. It's really good. Every now and then, like even we, you know, you can't keep plastic, you can't keep contaminants out. It's impossible. You'll always get a nail or a bolt or a rock or a plastic bag or, you know, a rubber glove or whatever it is. It's virtually impossible to keep it out. And we're very careful with our loading. The feedstock that comes in has been carefully collected, but even then it comes in. So, but what we showed to them was, here's the machine, here's our potential contaminant load. It's low, but it's potential. But the pyrolysis conditions that we attain destroy all of these particular materials. And we've got magnetic separators at the back end to get bolts and nails and whatever out post-process. And, you know, the plastic bags, well, they just add energy to the process. Not that we're not going out of our way to load plastic. Well, we try and get them out if we can, but we had to demonstrate that we achieve the conditions that thermally decompose these materials and that they're not in the char at the other end. And also, look, we did, you know, we've got a lot of laboratory test work as well on our char. We've tested for, you know, C1 to 6, C7 to 12, C12 to 18 hydrocarbon residues on the char with different lengths of molecules. And, you know, we showed that was all 0. So that's what we did. So, but in answer to your question, you could do it. You could probably still achieve it, organic certification, I think. I mean, and also you don't have to have organic certification. If you look at our code of practice, it's just been released and is open for comment. So if you're interested in this area and you want to comment on it, that'd be really good. So in there as well, what we've done is we've delineated the biochar products based on the risk of contaminant at the front end. So if you're going to, so we've got sort of 3 grades. If grade 1 is sort of absolute premium grade with pure, you know, almost pure feedstock for stock feed additives. So if you're going to start feeding animals, you want to make damn sure that the biochar is really good and not going to hurt a cow. Then you've got a standard biochar product that is still really good. You know, most likely has no issues with it and is suitable for a garden or you know, broad acre or trees or things like that. And then you've got sort of industrial grade where, yeah, you're basically cleaning up a feedstock that most likely would otherwise end up in landfill. So you may as well pyrolyze it. And that might be used as an industrial char product, such as a concrete additive. A lot of work coming out of Singapore using biochar as a concrete additive and getting incredible results. Really good. They're calling it, I met the fellow last year, they're calling it live concrete. They're loading the concrete with char. It's making it lighter, it's making it stronger, and they're also loading the concrete with some kind of concrete microbe. So when the concrete gets a crack in it, it self-heals. The microbes come alive, the water gets in, the microbes come back to life, eat up the limestone that's been evolved, released, and then heal it up and then go back to sleep. It's incredible. But anyway, look, just an example, that's a side topic, but the point is that you've got a sort of a 3rd grade where you use the char for industrial additives. So another one is asphalt additive. So we discussed that in the code of practice, where a lot of work coming out of California where they've added biochar to asphalt and getting really good results. So again, what they're trying to do in California is they're trying to create a big home for big volumes of biochar, and road-based additive is a good one. Makes the roads stronger, makes them last a lot longer, and apparently it's got really good outcomes as well. So so the code of practice is effectively answering that question, Shane. There's been a lot of discussion actually around that question over the past sort of few months around, and I think we've answered it well. Although it's out for comment at the moment. Let's see what people got to say.
Yeah. Andy had another question. Andy, over to you.
Sorry. Okay, back here. Are you currently talking to any Australian landfill companies to get your units at their facilities?
Look, not right now. look at the moment, as I said, at the moment, our opportunities are overseas at the moment. So we're focused on the opportunities that are in front of us, to be honest. Again, with landfill, look, I think that will change as the price of landfill rates go up. Landfill, it's not like you just go plop one next to a landfill and start feeding it in and off you go. You know, you've got to have good quality control systems at the front end to make sure you're getting a feedstock that is suitable for your technology and will produce a safe product. And you're not going to create an emissions problem as well. So you've got regulatory requirements there. So it's not like you can just go pop the thing in and off you go. There are regulatory requirements around that. In saying that, though, we've engaged heavily with the EPA Victoria on the different projects that we're undertaking, and they've been really good, very supportive, knowledgeable, and yeah, they've been really good actually. Been really good so far. But in saying that, we've made it easy for them because we're not in landfill, so, doing trees. So yeah, we've made it easy. But look, you know, I guess that's the point of this presentation is, you know, there's no technical reason why you can't do it. You know, you'd be surprised what you can get away with pyrolysis, because unlike gasification or anaerobic digestion or even to a point combustion, because combustion, once you get to high temperatures, you create ash agglomeration issues which can stuff up your back end on your boiler. Where at low temperature, we don't have ash agglomeration. So pyrolysis is the sweet spot for getting rid of almost everything. It really is a sweet spot for getting rid of, you know, a vast array of different materials, all mixed together if needed. So there's no technical reason to it, I guess, if that answers the question. Yeah. So you just have to have good quality controls at the front end. Go to the feedstock. The economics need to work. You got to get regulatory approval. But yeah, look, yeah, it absolutely could be done.
Is the process very different to the waste to energy units that they use for managing their waste in Europe?
Yeah, so the waste to energy units in Europe, I'm not super familiar with them. I believe they're doing, it's either really super high temperature gasification, or might have been plasma arc disposal. I think it's gasification. Basically, I mean, we build, outside of this discussion, we do build small scale gasifiers as well for wood. So gasification, you know, if you do it well, you're sitting at anywhere from 11 to 12 to 1300 degrees. So basically you just destroy all materials coming through it, and you create a syngas, and then you combust that, and then you put that through a traditional steam Rankine cycle system, or if the syngas is clean enough, you can put it into a combustion engine. Just depends. But also they've also got, they would probably have a pretty significant emissions management system on the back end as well. You know, they have scrubbers and electrostatic precipitators for particulates and all sorts of stuff like that. We've avoided all of that to date by running on the feedstocks we run on. We have a very, very clean machine, and we don't have an emissions issue because of the feedstocks that we're running on. And also there's the sophistication of our technology. We've managed to do that. But once you head into MSW and, you know, a mix of different feedstocks and those waste energy plants in Europe, you need to have a lot of systems on the back end to scrub out nasty emissions, and then to justify the cost of those devices, you need to have a certain scale to justify the cost of them. They're expensive. Like electrostatic precipitators, incredibly expensive. So you need a certain scale to do it. So,
which leads nicely to my last question, which is, what does your portable unit cost?
Oh, okay, yeah. So I can tell you. So we've got the batch machine, like the one at Manningham. We only build the big ones now. So they're a big 40-foot high cube machine. They're about $500,000, those machines. And the that Israeli unit, the 200 kilo an hour machine, the continuous unit, it's about 250 grand. Yeah, so
Thank you.
So they're not for domestic use.
No.
They're for commercial. Yeah.
But they sound fantastic, and we, be great if we could get them running everywhere.
Yeah. Well, us and others. That's why I listed other technologies as well. That doesn't, there are options out there, and there'll be things that we can do that others can't, and vice versa. So, yeah.
Adrian, can you just talk finally, perhaps, as we're probably going to wrap up, could you just talk finally about the carbon credits that you might generate from the process? Does any government scheme in Australia recognise carbon credits from biochar at the moment? Is the organisation seeking to get those credits recognised, or?
As far as I know, there's two organisations, us and Rainbow Bee Eater. We're going through it at the moment under the Puro scheme in Europe. So it's a voluntary scheme. So what's happening in Europe is there was a conference in Finland October last year, and one of our colleagues was at it. So what's happening in Europe is that Europe's and then we had the Puro people zoom in to Australia and discuss their carbon credit scheme here with us and the biochar sector, which is very useful actually. And what they're doing is what they're finding is that the more innovative and leading companies in Europe, that what they're finding is that particularly in the finance sector actually, is that they've been buying carbon offsets for the last 10 years, but it hasn't solved the problem. That's great. They've offset their footprint, and there's wind farms in China and solar in India or wherever they've got their carbon credits from. But meanwhile, carbon credits have been going, carbon emissions have been going up, and the CO2, ppm in the atmosphere has gone up. So it hasn't solved the problem. So what Puro's done is they've set up a scheme where they say, okay, we're going to sell carbon credits, but they're going to be different. They're going to actually be carbon negative. You're going to get carbon out of the atmosphere, and you can buy them, and you can offset your footprint that way. They will cost more because it's not just solar and wind. They'll cost more because it's different technologies, and they've got a few ways of doing it. One of them's around wood and trees, not planting trees, but using wood, and the wood has to go into what did she say? It has to go into a certified building that's got a lifespan of over 100 years. So anyway, that's what they've agreed to. But biochar is the other one, and I think they're the only two that they've got that are actually generating this particular type of credit of a carbon negative carbon credit. So it's quite interesting actually, and they've got quite significant financial institutions that are prepared to get involved in this. Recognising the fact that what they've been doing today hasn't, when you look at the, whatever we've got down in Tasmania, the big nose that measures the CO2 levels, and the one at Hawaii, the whatever that thing there is called, the CO2 just keeps going up and up. So it's recognising that, and so that's why they're interested in this particular scheme. And also just recently in the IPCC, another member of the Ansby board, Annette Cowie, is I think she's one of the lead authors of one of the IPCC chapters, and she was saying in our last meeting that biochar, well, not biochar, but they call it PYCC, pyrolytic carbon capture and storage or something, which is a long name for biochar, is now recognised in one of the subchapters of the IPCC, which I was surprised it took that long, to be honest. But anyway, it's been recognised. So it's in there as well now, which is interesting. I don't know what that means, but anyway, yeah. So there's Puro, there's the California scheme. In Australia, it's not recognised under the ERF. I think in the ERF there's a soil carbon methodology. Inside the soil carbon methodology, biochar is discussed, but I don't think you can generate credits on the biochar. You can generate credits on the additional carbon that the biochar creates because you've got more root mass and whatever down there. I don't think you can generate carbon under the ERF. But I mean, look, the ERF is only, was it $12 a tonne, really? It's not. You need more money than that to sort of make it worth your while for biochar, really. So, yeah.
Right.
But it's, look, it's coming, I think. It's coming out of you, and certainly a scheme we're keen to be involved in and to support as well.
Perfect. I think I probably actually should wrap up there. I'm thinking that that it's 5 to 9, and that's probably about. You've been very generous with your time. I'll throw to you, Jeff, for some final words.
Yeah, thanks, Shane. Not much to add. Adrian, that was amazing. Really interesting. Thank you for your time.
No worries.
And yeah, as we discussed earlier, you'll be happy to put your slides and this video up on our website, and have people sort of direct questions to you on the contact details you've got on the screen there. Yeah, and look, I'm personally excited about what this might mean for City of Yarra and what we can sort of push them to consider. So we'll take up that mantle for you, and sort of see where we get to.
Keep an eye out on seek.com as well. We're struggling to keep up. We're going to be employing more people soon too. So if anyone's interested in being a biochar operator, then keep an eye out. We need practical yet smart people.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Adrian, and thank you everyone who joined us tonight as well. And I hope to see everybody at our next Climate Solutions webinar, which will be on the 15th of July.
No worries. Thank you very much, Shane and Jeff. Thanks
no
very much
worries.
for hosting
cool.
me, and thanks for the 19 people that have sat there and listened to me talk about biochar. Thanks very much.
Thanks heaps, Adrian.
No worries, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ciao. See everybody.
Ciao.
And Yarra Climate, are you still there, Jeff?
Yeah, still here.
We didn't get to the last question I just put in, but chatting with Adrian a couple of weeks ago, we've been friends for ages. He told me to look up the Kontiki biochar kiln, meant for basically small home farm use. It's basically a metal cone, and you can produce quite a lot of biochar in a day at home just with your garden clippings and things. The trouble is, it looks like they're 1,000 to 3,000 for the kits to buy them. But I wonder whether Yarra Climate might explore that a little bit more and perhaps produce kits for people to use at home.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting suggestion. We might take that question and follow it up with Adrian after the fact. Yeah.
It'd be brilliant. I think he should do it as a sideline. It's a cone that's a bit over 1 metre across and less than 1 metre high, and it's perfectly optimised for producing smokeless fires. And the main cost is that you've got to keep loading it in real time, so you have to tend it for an afternoon or something. But at home, people wouldn't mind doing that at all. And if you end up with half a cubic metre of biochar or something out of it, it's fantastic.
Or other small scale applications like small hobby farms or community farms.
There's lots of stuff on the web about it. And Adrian actually said to me, the guy that invented this has been doing biochar for 20 years before him and knows heaps more than him.
That's a scary thought.
Yeah. So anyway, just thought I'd mention it because if it could be sort of fostered by someone like Yarra, that'd be fantastic.
Cool. All right, we'll do some research. Thanks for the suggestion, Michael.
Yeah.
Cheers. Bye.
All right. Are we just